For those of you who don't know me, I'm Senator Udall, and I have the great privilege of representing the state of Colorado, where wildfire is not an uncommon occurrence, as we just heard from Russ. Russ laid out many of the important findings in this report, and I wanted to follow on with some comments, and then I know we're all eager to get to some questions and an exchange with you all. I would tell you I'm happy to do that because I'm surrounded by experts and by people who really know this topic. I requested the study when the ground was literally still hot and after I toured the burn area. And what really struck me and all of us who got on the ground, I know Sheriff, you had the same impression, was just the severity of the fire and the really indiscriminate nature of the burn areas. I saw some structures that were spared, and while others, in some cases right next door, were totally destroyed. I know Chief Gibson in particular was really pained because his fire station up in Fourmile Canyon had been destroyed with an important piece of equipment in there, I think a $250,000 piece of equipment. And right next door to it, the church had been spared. I guess if you balance things out, probably right that the church was spared if we want to stay in good standing with the lad upstairs. But it was really quite striking. And it's always, as we've heard here, beneficial to look back so that we can look forward. In the end, we want to improve our approaches, our policies, and our actions. And I believe this impartial and scientific analysis was very comprehensive, and it's going to help us in the wildfire-prone communities, which really exist anywhere in our state, if you think about it. We have the potential anywhere in our state. I think it's also important to note that this is still a draft. I think this is the way we're characterizing it. It's a preliminary report of a draft. So there's a lot of input yet to come. There may be some additional conclusions. But I really want to thank the Rocky Mountain Research Station for your willingness to release this draft early. And the point behind that statement is that the findings in many cases relate directly to homeowners. And we want to give them as much lead time as possible to prepare for next year's wildfire season. Let me just touch briefly on some of the findings that I believe are noteworthy, and they've already been touched upon. The humidity levels were almost at records. I'm sure there are places on the face of the earth where we've registered 0 humidity levels, but these are very, very close to as low as you can possibly go. The conditions may be extreme, but they're not uncommon here in the Front Range. Therefore, we've got to be prepared for these kinds of fires in the future. The researchers found that our fire responders' efforts, number 2, were very well executed. We didn't lose a life, even though this was a very fast-moving and dramatic fire in one of the most densely developed areas of our foothills. The researchers also found, as Russ alluded to, that the air tankers were very effective once those winds died down. And Sheriff, going back to my initial point, you and all of the first responders are really the heroes and the heroines in this effort. So I want to make sure that that's underlined here today. There's some good questions asked about fuel reductions projects. Fuel reduction is a critical tool in our toolbox. It helps to reduce wildfire risk, keeps our wildlife populations protected, and protects our water supplies. And I've invited the research team to come back and meet with federal and state land managers and local officials so we can understand this issue better. But 2 things are clear when you look at fuel reduction. One is that we need to make sure that we're spending our resources effectively by treating large areas that are most effective. You're going to hear this concept of landscape treatment that's integrated. But we also need to make sure that we are clearing trimmed trees and brush off the ground after a treatment. And there's some facts in the report and conclusions tied to the fact that there was biomass left in place after it had been trimmed and cut. The third question, but also I think conclusion, is that prescribed burning is still a critical tool in our toolbox, even near communities. And when it's done properly, it can save the built environment. Of course, it's going to save lives as well. By the way, if I could talk in a broader theme, we're all concerned about our economy. We're all concerned about Americans having jobs. And I believe with the right kind of innovation, removing this wood can be a win-win for Colorado's economy. We're already using the wood for some construction. There are a couple of construction and home building companies that are actually marketing blue stain and beetle-killed wood. And of course, we're using woody biomass for energy as well. But we can do better. We need to work together to find some really productive uses for this wood. The most important conclusion in the report was that the survival or loss of homes exposed to wildfire flames and firebrands were determined by the condition of the home ignition zone, the HIZ. And this is the design, materials, and maintenance of your home and 100 feet adjacent to that home. Homeowners who had adobe and non-wood homes and had removed flammable ground material around their homes by raking up pine needles, putting in rock gardens, were the ones that survived. Now, I know this is a sensitive issue because a lot of people live in the foothills because they love trees. And I want to emphasize is that there's so much more that you can do that has nothing to do with removing trees. And in fact, this fire taught us that the most important yard tool you can have if you live in a wildfire-prone area is not a chainsaw. It's a rake and a weed whacker. Homeowners can contact their experts at the Colorado State Forest Service and other agencies on how to make your home fire-wise. That's a branding of a process and an approach, the fire-wise program. If you keep flammable materials like pine needles, grasses, and even wood decks, now that's a challenge away from your home, but you may want to have a freestanding wood deck. This won't always protect your home from wildfire. There are homeowners in the Fourmile fire who worked hard to create defensible space, depth space, but they still lost their homes. But it's a concrete step that homeowners can take, and it can make a huge difference. So in sum, I want to thank all of the people who contributed to this report, many of whom aren't here, Russ and Rich and Ben. We're going to build on what we've learned. We're going to look forward to the final draft of this report, and we're going to begin to implement it. But we have to learn how to live with wildfire in the state of Colorado. We all have a role to play, and homeowners can do a lot to create defensible space regardless of the fuels reductions treatments which the government entities involved have to undertake as well. So again, thank you all for being here. I think this turnout's an important indication of how seriously we take what happened, but how eager we are to begin to implement policies that will minimize the potential for the kind of fire that we saw that started in Fourmile Canyon just a short year ago.